Okay, and this is scripture study with Mr. and Mrs. Carnal. We are studying the 23rd chapter of Job. And here we go.
Okay, so my question is, I've got a few questions. The first one is, I'm noticing that in Job, in particular, there is italics
Yes, a lot of
throughout,
italics.
and I'm trying to understand what these italics mean. Why it's italicized, what's going on.
Well, when we saw this in the Fires of Faith series, when something is italicized in scripture, what it means is this is the translator trying to assist with what is trying to be said. And it could be right and it could be wrong. They normally get it pretty right, and the reason that we can test that it's right is because the Old Testament is backed up by Hebrew studies. There are records of most ancient Old Testament scriptures in the old languages, Aramaic, modern Hebrew, so it can be verified despite the italics.
Okay, okay, that makes sense. And so we see here, it's interesting, but he's saying he can't seem to find God. He can't seem to see him. He can't seem to feel him. He's got a lot of faith,
Mm-hmm.
you know. I'm not really clear on whether or not he has a testimony built. I'm getting the impression that he doesn't, and that this kind of is the trial in which hopefully he'll build a testimony.
You see, I got the exact opposite impression.
Really? So what did you get? Tell
What
me.
what I got out of it is here is a man who knows God so well and so intimately that when these troubles are upon him, he understands that his God, his Lord, is so just that even if he were to try and plead his case in front of him, that it would all be for naught. It would all be. He knows that even if he tried to justly stand and plead his case, that it would be um, that it would be pointless.
That it would be pointless. Why?
It would be pointless because he understands the full depth and gravitas of who God is. And he would understand that even as the words were leaving his mouth, he would know, he would already know the answers to his questions. He would already know the answers as to why he's going through these trials and tribulations. He would already know as the words were leaving his mouth, with absolute certainty, that everything being done to him is for the glory of God.
And that does make sense because it does say here, you know, will he plead against me with his great power? No. But he would put strength in me. Like,
Yes.
I would still have to go through this. It might be handled differently. Maybe not the way maybe not the way I would hope, physically. But
But he knows this is someone who has gone through obviously nothing this dramatic as the trials of Job, but he's gone through enough trials before this to know how God would succor him, how God would react. He knows that if he were to even try to plead his case before God himself, what the end result would be.
yeah, that's a very good point. But that is faith.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That, to me, that's faith. That doesn't necessarily equal testimony.
Ooh. Now that is, I'm going to slightly disagree. Job, you might be right in that Job doesn't have faith, but he does have a perfect knowledge of how God works.
No, I am not saying he doesn't have faith.
Mm-hmm.
I am saying that the faith that is described
Mm-hmm.
is some of the strongest faith that we've seen. Um, so you misunderstand me. What I'm saying is, it seems like it's possible that Job has unbelievable amount of faith, but what he seems to lack at this point, or I question whether or not he lacks at this point, is a testimony, because a testimony is not the same as faith.
Interesting.
And so, I mean, think about it. Do we really know? I'm not so sure that, we learn about Job throughout these chapters. I'm not so sure that we've seen anything that kind of uh, tests his faith and builds a testimony up until now. We do know that he has strong faith, which is good, but we don't know about any former trials and tribulations that would have sort of tested him in a way to strengthen or build a testimony. He, usually with a lot of others in the Old Testament, we can see it'll point out when they pray, right?
Mm-hmm.
It'll say, oh, and he prayed. Do you recall seeing any of that anywhere in Job?
Yes.
You do? Okay.
It's alluded to in the beginning. It's alluded to in the beginning that Job would go and offer sacrifices to the Lord, not just on his own behalf, but on the behalf of his family. He he did exercise his faith. Now, to most people, and even to me, that would suggest that he did have a testimony. But a testimony is a declaration of things that you know to be true about the Lord, about, and a testimony isn't something you would have heard in the ancient world. A testimony is something that is a tool for evangelism more than it is uh, a practical day-to-day thing. A testimony is your declaration of faith to others.
Mm-hmm.
This entire book is Job's testimony to his friends.
Right. And that's what I'm trying to, that's, you've just perfectly summed up what I was trying to say.
And I'm not sure it's a fair critique to say to Job, you have never had nor used your testimony for God's glory. I'm not sure that would have been appropriate for his time and setting.
I'm not sure I ever said that was something that I asserted.
Okay.
What I was saying was I wasn't so sure that Job had a testimony up until now in these trials and tribulations, and that this is the building of that testimony.
This is the first time he's exercised and used a testimony.
Right, right. That we can see. That we can see. It's just a hypothesis. And the reason I'm wondering this is I'm wondering because I see he's saying, I look to the left, I don't see you. I look to the right, you're hiding. You know, I don't see you. And so while Job may be an orderly kind of person who shows faith and who goes to the altar and sacrifices and does all of the things, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's a good Jew. He does all of the things, right?
Yes.
As many do, right? They do all of the things, but it kind of is more of a tradition thing than anything else for some of them, right? And yet, um, I wonder, because we talk about how Job might be one of the oldest books. I wonder if one of the big points here in 23 in Job is to show that if we want to feel or be nearer to God, we need to seek Him out. And to seek Him out means to pray.
Yeah.
Because I really don't recall seeing in any other parts of Job where it's obvious that he prays. I'm sure he goes through the rituals and the rigmaroles and the traditions and all that, and I'm sure he does everything he's supposed to, but he makes it clear he's kind of missing seeing God.
And here's I slightly contend with that, because you don't get to the point where Job is at when he starts off saying, I know that even before the words leave my mouth, the answers that I am going to receive back from my God. You don't get to that point without prayer. You don't get to that point without trial. You don't get to that point without building that personal relationship with God. You don't get to that point if you were just merely going through the motions.
See, I have to disagree, and I have to disagree because although you were contending with were earlier what I had to say, he makes it clear in 1 through 5. No, he makes it clear in 1 through 4. He says, "Oh, if I could see you, if I knew you were where you were,
Mm-hmm.
if I could feel you, if you were in front of me, I would be so displeased and I would complain. I know what your answer would be, but I would still ask. I would still complain because it's human."
Yes, it is human, but no one. I don't think anyone here thinks Job is supernal, or that having that relationship makes you inherently supernal.
He he makes it clear. He says, like, "This is what I would ask for. I know you would give me help. It might not be the type of help I'm looking for, but I know you would. I know he would give me help, but I can't find him. I don't see him to my left or to my right."
Well, what that sounds like to me is someone who knows God and is so angry he can't bring himself to ask.
No, well, you know what? You know who might not be able to bring themselves to ask? If somebody's in that much pain, they're gonna ask.
Mm-hmm.
You know who wouldn't bring themselves to ask?
Hmm.
Someone who doesn't know what to do in order to ask. Someone who doesn't know or hasn't been taught how to call upon and lie their burdens down.
Interesting. That's interesting.
Anyways, where were we?
Well, we were discussing 23 as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
and we've just kind of gone back and forth throughout the entire chapter. Um, what did the last 3 verses say?
It says, "Therefore I am troubled at his presence. When I consider, I am afraid of him. For God maketh my heart soft, and the Almighty troubleth me, because I was not cut off before the darkness, neither hath he covered the darkness from my face."
Huh. That is a quandary, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You see, and that's kind of where I'm struggling to understand it completely. He has the faith enough to know God, and yet he still somehow lacks the faith to approach God. That's interesting.
I assert that it is not that he lacks the faith. I assert that he lacks the know-how.
That's also that's stunning. Um, I think we're learning a bit more about Job than we had before.
He says, therefore I am troubled at his presence. When I consider, I am afraid of him. Well, yeah, people talk about fearing God. And some people talk about it in the sense of completely full of awe, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for God maketh my heart soft, and the Almighty troubleth me. You know, he's like, well, I've got these things happening right now. But this is
You see,
interesting. I'm sorry, go ahead.
this takes childlike faith to a whole new level, where you either truly don't know how to approach your parent, or you're simply afraid to. Because what I'm seeing is not someone who's simply unknowledgeable. I see someone who has truly adopted that childlike quality.
Mm-hmm.
That's
This is interesting. 17. Because I was not cut off before the darkness, neither, which is in italics, hath he covered the darkness from my face. So that word neither is in italics.
which means you can, if you ignored the neither, it's supposed to mean the same thing as if the neither was there. So read it without the neither and see how it reads.
Because I was not cut off before the darkness, hath he covered the darkness from my face. Cut off.
It's strange because it suggests that Job's sight, his vision, his perspective is not darkened by his afflictions. And he says that he can see clearly, in spite of his pain and in spite of his fears and in spite of his almost faltering relationship with deity in this chapter.
Where does he say he can see clearly?
It doesn't say he can see clearly, it just says that the darkness isn't there.
Oh. Um,
That's just how I read into it.
okay. I don't read that it says the darkness isn't there.
Okay.
I read that he says he was not cut off before the darkness, and neither hath he covered the darkness from my face. So, I'm
Okay.
still trying. I'm still trying to figure out what that one means, but
Well,
I don't derive that it's not there.
alternatively, it could be a lack of deliverance from the darkness.
That is more what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Because what is it to cut off somebody? I mean, it's to either remove them from an experience
Mm-hmm.
or death, right?
Yes.
It says, neither hath he covered the darkness from my face, meaning neither has he removed it from me.
Yeah.
That's more where I was going with that. Yeah.
I think you're more correct than I am.
Not sure. We may never know. But what I do know is that it's given us a lot to ponder and a lot to think about. You know, and these translations, with the italics, they could change up what it means. You know.
I think that's all I've got for this chapter.
Me too.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.